All right, page 276 starts lesson 5-6. This is the final method for solving quadratics. We did graphing, completing the square, factoring, and today is the quadratic formula. This is very helpful. You can use quadratic formula on all problems, unless I state otherwise, but it'll work for all problems. Hopefully, as we go through this lesson, it will also clarify your answers, as some of you have said you weren't sure how to leave the answers in radical form, and that's kind of confusing. So we'll have some answers will be the same, will look the same today as they did last time, because we're doing the same thing, we're just using a different method. So hopefully as we go through them, that will be more clear to you. The quadratic formula is on page 276 down there at the bottom. I would write that at the top of your homework page. You're going to use that on pretty much every problem that you do today. X equals, that is the opposite of B. That's what negative B means. So if your B is negative 9, then you would put 9 right there. The opposite of B, plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. That is the quadratic formula. Some of you may have seen that before in something else that you did. It's on the formula sheet for the end of course test. It's been there for the math test. So you've probably seen it before. Hopefully some of you have used it before. If not, today will be your first. So looking then at the first problem, x squared minus 8x minus 33 equals 0. Incidentally, this problem is also factorable. We'd be looking for factors of 33 with a difference of 8. What would they be? 11 and 3. You will find that will probably be your answer. Well, it is your answer once you get down there. So again, factoring is much quicker than any of these other methods if you learn how to do it. So looking here, we need to have A, B, and C in order to plug it into the quadratic formula. What is A in this problem? A is 1, B is negative 8. Make sure you do that. That's really the only possible way you can screw this up is your signs. So that's what you really have to be careful with. And then C is negative 33. Once you've done that, all you do is plug them into the formula and simplify. Every single time, plug them in and simplify. So what's the opposite of B if B is negative 8? So you're going to have 8 plus or minus the square root of negative 8 squared, and I would again use parentheses there when you put your negative 8 squared. This is where, this next step is where most of the mistakes will occur. This is where you will mess up your signs. Because if you put a minus right here, I'm going to write it and then erase it, but if you put a minus there, and then you multiply this 4AC and you get a negative number, that's where you're going to end up screwing up what this sign should be. So, I wouldn't put a sign there at all. I would just figure out what 4AC is. If it's positive, it's plus. If it's minus, then it would be minus. So, what is A and C? 1 and negative 33. So you'd have 4 times 1 times negative 33. That's going to give you a negative or a positive number. Yeah, I don't know what this. So if you have, that's probably the best way right there. So multiply negative 4 times 1 times negative 33. We'll do that in the next step. And then 2 times A, and what's A? 2 times 1. Now, again, once you've got everything plugged in, all you have to do is start simplifying. So the 8 out front, this is probably going to stay out there all the way down the page till about the last, one of the last steps, until you get all of this simplified out. So we have 8 again, plus or minus the square root. You can split this up into as many steps as you need to. Just make sure you get the right answer. So what is negative 8 squared? 64. Then here's the key point. So do negative 4 times 1 times negative 33. That's the best way to make sure you don't mess up the sign. So what will our answer be? Multiply. 132. It'll be positive or negative though. It'll be plus 132 all over 2. And we keep simplifying down. 8 plus or minus what? 196 all over 2. Now, the 196, you've got to simplify the radical every time. Sometimes they'll be perfect squares, sometimes not. But no matter what, this is again going back to section 4 where we simplified radicals. That's what you have to do there. So I would always check, especially with bigger numbers, to see if that is a perfect square. It's 196. What's the square root? So you have 8 plus or minus 14 all over 2. Is there anything you can take out of all 3 of those numbers? You take a 2 out of all 3 of them, which would give you 4 what? 4 plus or minus 7. And what would you have on the bottom? 1, and you don't need to write that. So again, this is just like last section. We had problems look just like that. What's 4 plus 7? 11, and 4 minus 7? Negative 3. And again, whoever said that, the answer is back on the first step when they factored that, set 11 and 3, and that is in fact what your answer comes out to be. We're going to do a couple more examples, but they're all the same thing. It's just simplifying is a little different. Sometimes this won't be a perfect square, or you can get the square root. Sometimes it'll be an imaginary number. X squared minus 34x plus 289. Equals 0. So A is 1. What's B? B is negative 34. And C is positive 289. You don't have to write those 3 letters down there. Some of you will be able to just start plugging in. That's fine. So the opposite of B then is positive 34 plus or minus the square root of negative 34 squared minus 4 times A is 1 and C is 289 all over 2 times 1. A will a lot of times be 1. So most of the time you're going to have a 2 under there. But sometimes it'll be different numbers. Yeah. So what's negative 34 squared? 1,000 what? 1,156. And then negative 4 times 1 times 289.
No, that's not what's in there. You got to take that minus 34 squared.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at, right? This is 34 squared, right? So then we have minus 1156 all over 2. I wouldn't try to type this whole part in. I wouldn't try to type that in one step. It can be done, but you need to use a lot of parentheses. I would square and get that number, and then I'd multiply negative 4 times the other 2 and get that number. That's how I would do that. So then we have 34 plus or minus the square root of 0 all over 2. So basically, what's that give you? What's square root of 0? 0. This part's gone. You just add 34 over 2. Your answer is 17. And what do you think that is? That is a double root. There are basically two other types of answers. You can get imaginary numbers or the radical numbers. We'll do one of those two. And I'll give you some homework problems.